Jen from Fabulous Paper Emporium, and we are back with the second part of our grand finale album, which, as you know by now, if you've watched the first part, which if you haven't, I would definitely recommend you watch that first part first. But we are making a album, not just any regular album, because that wouldn't be a grand finale album. We're making an album which will stand up and will be decorated like a bit of like a log cabin, or a cabin anyways. And so I am super, super excited. But in order to get to that point, we need to finish off the album. So in part one, I'm just getting out my first part. In part one, we basically created the outside of the album. So this is what that looks like. I know I'm going to have to probably erase that, even though it will be covered with decorative paper. So basically this is what we're looking for. We're doing this. So we've got our cover, we have our hinge, we have our pages. We're only doing 3 pages. These are also referred to as signatures. So we're doing 3 pages, and they will cover, you'll have basically 4 pages per side, or 4 sides, I should say. So you have this one side which flips out with the flip out. You do have a pocket as well, so you can have an insert there. And we've got the 3 are exactly the same. So, and then we'll be making a roof as well. So we're going to get all that done today in this part. And I'm just trying to right now work out the parts to make sure that we have, you know, our finale one on Monday, which is the final day for CRAFTSMAS in July. I really hope that you've been enjoying these tutorials that I brought to you, and it's been super fun. I have really enjoyed it. It really is getting me into kind of the holiday spirit, but we're a little bit ahead of schedule, I guess. And but anyway, some good ideas, and for those of us who craft for the holidays, is excellent to have these kinds of things brought sooner rather than later, so that you can purchase your products and start creating. And just as a side note, if you are interested in at least the designer paper, that is something that we certainly carry in store. So, getting to the album. Okay, so we have a couple of pieces here. I am going to start off by creating the hinge. And in order to create the hinge, I start off with a piece of 65-pound cardstock. Anything heavier I feel would be very rigid, because we are going to be doubling up in order to create those hinges. So this one is 65 pound, and it measures 8.5 by 6 1/8. And that 6 1/8 is important because we are making our pages 6 1/4. So I realized when I was making my first template that my pages were just a little bit too large. So plus we're dealing with a lot of 8s at that point, and that drives me crazy. So I don't know about you, I'm not a fan of the 8s, but I do it when necessary. So with your page, I was going to say page, and then I stopped at we are going to be scoring this. So with the 8.5 inch side at the top, we are going to start off scoring at 1.5, then at 2 1/4, at 3, at 3 1/2, at 4 1/4, at 5, at 5 1/2, 6 1/4, and at 7. Okay, so we here have, we start off, so this is how this generally works. And if you haven't ever made an album, I also have some other videos that are based on just album making, but I'm still going to go over the same steps here. So our first two panels, so we've got our first score mark, then our first panel, then our second score mark, and then our second panel. So these two are 3/4 inches wide. So those are going to be part of our hinge. Then we have a 1/2 inch, that's going to be the spacer. Then we have two more 3/4 inch panels. Those are our second hinge. Then a half inch spacer, that's going to obviously be the spacer. And then we have two more that are going to be our hinge. And that's basically how the creating of a hinge works. So I'm going to grab my score mat just so that I can do my folding. And so the first fold, I just rotated this towards me. The first fold is going to be towards you. And then I'm going to fold this back on itself. So I'm going to be able to create the part that sticks up, and that will be what our pages, our signatures are attached to. So that's kind of how that works. So I've got my X's on either side. This next piece is a spacer, and then I'm going to be able to come together and create my next hinge like so with the spacer and then my next hinge. Okay, so that's kind of what it looks like then. I haven't obviously added my tape yet, but that is the very next step. So you do want to make sure, one thing is that everything is kind of lining up. Now that we have our, oh my gosh, I totally lost my, okay. I haven't really burnished anything in place because I do want to make sure that this hinge mechanism is going to lay flat, which is why I was kind of pushing everything together, kind of looking at it from the side, and I get a really nice flat level surface on the bottom. So I feel like I'm good to go with my double-sided tape. So with the score tape, I am using 5/8 score tape. I'm going to go on the inside now. This is how I'm going to connect the hinge mechanism. So I've got one side on the inside with double-sided tape. So once we attach that, that will stay up permanently, and then we're good to go. So I'm going to keep doing that. So I've applied one here. Now remember these flat areas, and if it helps you to not put score, because right now we don't want score tape on these. I don't want to put score tape there or there for right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply my tape to my second hinge. Now remember, you want to pick a score tape. If you're using tape, double-sided tape, you want to make sure, you have to make sure that you are staying in between those score marks. That is essential because you want to make sure that this can move pretty freely in terms of being able to, like if your page is on there, you need to be able to make sure that this can bend forwards and backwards pretty freely. Okay, so this is what the back side of my hinge, my paper, my cardstock looks like. So I've got double-sided tape, I skip a couple, double-sided tape, skip a couple, and then double-sided tape. So this one is pretty easy because we've got that score mark to guide us, that we can just fold those in half, and there is our first hinge. Now we can kind of come back, and I'm using my score tool for that, which is not exactly the most rigid thing in the world. Pull this one off and fold. Get that adhered. Oh, there's my bone folder. So I'm just going to fold that, get that burnished, And then it's going to want to curl, which is fine. That's not a big deal. Just provided you don't get anything else stuck to that double-sided tape. Because it is crazy to try and remove it, let me tell you. So while you're doing this, when you're folding and doing your burnishing, you make sure that your hinges, when you lay them flat, that they're really all aligned at the top and bottom. I know sometimes when you're scoring, it can maybe not be straight 100%. So as you're folding everything in place, just make sure that as you fold it like this, just make sure that your edges are aligned, and that will ensure that your hinges are nice and straight. Okay, so that's step 1 done. Now the second step that we need to do for all of these hinges is we're going to add double-sided tape to both sides of the hinge. So that's the part that's sticking up now. And to do that, I'm again going to reach for I feel like I'm going to be running out of this very, very soon. So I'll have to reach over and grab some more. So we are wanting this, you know what, I think 5/8 is a little bit too much. So I'm going to go down to a 1/2 inch. That's what this one is. I don't think so. Actually, give me one quick second. I think the other one that I have there is 3/8. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to grab 1/2 inch. And the reason why I'm grabbing some 1/2 inch is the 5/8 just comes down too low. And when we attach our pages, we don't go right to the bottom. We don't attach it and have it go flush, because then movement would be impeded by the fact that the paper is right there. So I want to attach, when I'm putting on my double-sided tape, as soon as I find the start, there we go, I'm attaching it right to the very top of the hinge. Okay, so right close to that top score line is where I'm wanting my double-sided tape to live. So you see that? I've left quite a bit of space. That's maybe about 1/4 inch-ish, which would make sense because those are it's 3/4 inch. This is 1/2, so that would be about 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to apply the double-sided tape to the other side. We want it on both sides 100% of the time, because the paper is going to need to have, or our pages rather, are going to need to have something to grab onto on both sides. So that is pretty essential as far as that goes. Okay, so you're going to continue on. Since I've got this way, I'm going to continue doing that on this side. Then I'm just going to flip it over and finish the other 2 sides. So this part is quite simple. And then there's a lot of score tape kind of involved in album making. I've just found that score tape it's not going anywhere, which can be a good thing, a positive, a pro, and a con. If you happen to put the wrong thing on score tape, like I said, it ain't going anywhere. So you're kind of stuck there. And I think we've all had that moment of no when using it. So try to be as careful as possible. Okay, so we've got all of our hinges done. So both sides of the hinge. And now we need to flip it over. We need to add some tape. You can use glue too. That certainly is not a problem. But we need to apply it to the back side so that when we go to install it in our album, we are good to go. Now the hinge, I'm going to open my album really quickly. So this will fit in the middle of our spine. So the hinge is all going to be attached there. Okay, I didn't do score marks on the right or left side where the album will open and close, like where the covers are, but we'll do that once it's installed. I know some album makers like to score it first. I just find that sometimes the score marks don't land right where they need to be, and then it just becomes, you know, problematic sometimes. So I'll be installing it without score marks, and then when it's installed, we'll go through the process of how to, you know, train the paper. We're paper trainers. So I'm going to grab, probably going to end up running out of this, but that's okay. I'm going to run my score tape. Sometimes I run it this way, opposite, doesn't really matter, because it's all going to get covered anyways. So it, yeah, so you'll be good to go. And just like when I was doing the covers, I am going to apply quite a bit of score tape. If you happen to have larger strips, or the wider, I should say. You know what, I'm going to put that there. No, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use, I don't like having the edge meet up with the insides for some reason. I don't know that it really makes a difference, to be quite honest with you, but it's just a personal thing. It's one of those things. Nobody's ever said no not to do it. It just is, it's me. It's all me. Okay, so I'm going to apply some of my 1/2 inch down the middle part. All right. And that will leave me a very, very small, little tiny bit there, which I think is going to be about 1/4 inch. So I'll grab my 1/4 inch score tape and run that along that one. Okay, and then once I'm done that, I just am going to go over with my bone folder, make sure everything is down, is all very well attached. Okay, so that is the base. Don't worry about your hinges if they, you know, they're meant to go from side to side. So you want them to be able to move freely. This is now what you are left with. Okay, so with that, we bring in our base that we made in part 1. And our hinge is going to be just a little bit, you need to have it so that it doesn't reach from top to bottom. You're going to have a little bit of space, and I can't remember exactly how much that is. Probably about 1/4 inch. That was 1/8, right? That was 1/8. Yep. And this is 1/2. So it's going to be 3/8. 1, 2, 3, yeah, 3/8. So you want to kind of try and split the difference as much as possible between the top and the bottom. And then we're going to try and put this down as square as possible, because if this is off a little bit, then, you know, your pages are going to be a little bit crooked. So here's where kind of the attention to detail part kind of comes in. So I'm going to peel off all of this adhesive backing. There is no other way to do it. You don't have the safety of being able to you know, fold the sides back, which I personally love and has saved my hide more often than I can count. If you do want to add a layer of quote unquote protection, then I'm going to grab my liquid glue and kind of go over the score tape. Ugh, it's kind of grabbing onto that tip, but All right, so as I go along, this kind of gives me a little bit of wiggle room, a little bit. This is not going to be the end all and be all. Like, so if you happen to put it down and it is stuck, then you're going to have to live with where it lands. Okay, so I'm standing up just to get a better look at where my hinge is lying. I'm looking at, here's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at this crease here, right, which has created our spine. I'm measuring, kind of eyeballing that with the lines on my hinge, as well as top and bottom, trying to make sure that that is as level as possible with as much, you know, equal spacing as possible. So that is where my hinge is going to live. It is down now. There is no coming back. Take my bone folder or this little score tool, because the score tool doesn't really have a sharp edge where my bone folder does. You really do not want to rip now, because boy, oh boy, that's happened to me before and I wanted to cry. Okay, so that is now in place. Firm, we aren't going anywhere. Okay, so now I can still see the lines created by our cover attaching to our spine. So in those little areas, if I come to the left side and I start to fold, you'll notice that it starts, you know, the paper, part of the hinge is starting to crease. So you just take your bone folder very gently. You're going to help the paper know to go bend, fold towards the inside. Okay, and it really is just as easy as that. I'm going to flip it around because I find it easier to do it on the left side. And again, just as I start to fold, I bend that in, and away we go. So now we have our cover. As it folds and things like that, it'll get used to. You can even fold it this way, because this is a lay flat cover album. You can fold it like that, fold it right in half, and that starts really to train the paper. Okay, so we're one more step closer. The next part is creating our pages. And to create our pages, we are going to need 6 pieces of cardstock in total. For the pages, personally, I use 110 pound. You don't have to use 110 pound. I've used 65 before. It works great because there's all kinds of layers that are going to go on top, but I still always revert back. I feel just more secure using 110. So with the pages now, or the signatures rather, you are going to need 3 pages or 3 pieces that are 8.5 by 8.25 by 7.25. Can't read obviously this morning. And then we're going to need 3 more that are 8.25 by 6.25. So we have the 7.25 because we're going to be doing some scoring on these sheets, and we will get to that right now. Okay, so I'm going to remove my score mat, and I put that in. Okay, so with the 7.25 inches at the top, we are going to be scoring a 1/2 inch on either side. So I'm scoring at 6 3/4. And because doing a 1/2 inch really is kind of inconvenient on the left hand side, I'm going to spin my paper around 180 degrees, and I'm scoring again at 6 3/4. So you have 2 score marks on either side. And I'm going to do that to all 3 pieces that are measuring 7 1/4 by 8 1/4. So with all 3 pieces now done, I really like working on this score mat. So I am going to just simply fold all of my score lines, making sure that everything is nice and square. So I'm checking that, not that I really need to, but you want to make sure that your sides, the top, the left and the right are, or top and bottom, depending on how you've got it, that everything is lining up right here, right along the top and right along the bottom. Okay, so with all 3 pages done, now we're going to I'm going to attach some more score tape. So again, looking for my 3/8 inch, because again, we don't want it, a 1/2 inch would be really, really kind of tight along there, and I don't want that. Okay, perfect. So all 3 pages are done, scored, and the double-sided tape, score tape is applied. I'm now going to bring in my pages, or the pieces that are cut at 6 1/4 by 8 1/4. These are going to fit on top of the 2 little flaps. So the flaps are going to go on the inside. The 6 1/4 by 8 1/4 fits perfectly on top. And how we do this, or at least how I do it, you do have the option of completely peeling this back, applying your glue as your, you know, kind of safety net, if you will, and you know, then going from there. I prefer to just peel back a little bit. I start it on the top, and this way, if I happen not to have it in the perfect position, I can usually get it off. So I've got it firmly on my work surface. So I like the position of where this is, and I'm going to just quickly run my fingers at the top while holding that in place. And then I'm going to lay it down, and then ta-da, pull out my strips. I just pull that tab. I'm not putting too much pressure on the top part, because if I did, I run the risk of tearing that adhesive, the adhesive backing, which is not the end of the world. It just means that you have to go in with like a tool to kind of get that started again. So here we have our first page, our first signature, if you will. So I'm going to continue doing that with the rest of these. Excellent. So we've got our 3 signatures started. And now what we are going to do is, let me just bring this back in. To create that extra flap, we are going to need to attach these pages. Okay, so with our 3, we need 3 more sheets, and these are cut at 6 1/4 by 8 3/4, and we're going to be scoring these at 8 1/4, and these are going to create those flaps to add more space, more real estate to our lovely album. So I'm scoring with the 8 3/4 at the top. I'm scoring at 8 1/4. So basically scoring at a half inch little flap. So if you wanted to score, if you happen to be left-handed, you can always score at 8.5 or at a 1/2 inch, if that makes more sense. So I'm going to fold these at the score mark, and then we'll be adding some double-sided tape to each of the flaps. Okay, so I've used my 3/8 inch score tape, scored along the top flaps, and now we are going to put install those on our signatures. So to do that, I'm just going to grab a signature with the open side at the top, well, top or bottom, doesn't really matter. I am going to, just to give me a little bit more room and space, I am going to do what I did for attaching the 2 pages for our signatures, as I'm just going to start it. I'm going to make sure that this is level or in line across the top, across the bottom, across the sides. It really should be. And then I gently pull my score tape. Adhere that. And now we have one full signature done. So to repeat that again, we take our signature. It makes it easier when you're doing something, the signatures that are rectangular as opposed to square, because at square, you always have to be super, super vigilant about where your openings are, because that will affect where these flip outs come into play. So always something to be very, very mindful of. Okay, so I've got this just going on the other side, starting on the left hand side, and I just gently pull that out. And then our last one. Okay. So this will, when we have 4, sections per page, per signature, you do end up having 12. So could be your 12 days of Christmas. It could be a photo album. It could just be a memory keeper, whatever it is that you want to do. So there's a lot of space. Okay, so now comes time to add our signatures in. Now, this is what I prefer to do. I prefer to add them in and decorate them while they're in the album. Others prefer to do it outside the album and then install them fully decorated. So that is really up to you, but I prefer doing the installation now. So there's really no rhyme or reason as to which one is the front, like the front cover, the back cover, it's all the same. I personally am going to have my flaps facing forward, the front of the album. So if my left hand side is the front of the album, I'm going to be putting my signatures in like this. So the flap comes up that way. It's going to be more of like a vertical album anyways, but that's just, how I'm going to do it. So I'm going to start like I've been doing pretty much all along. I'm going to start by peeling off the adhesive backing, but just a bit. So I'm going to leave myself a little bit of a flap, a tag at the top and on either side rather. And I'm just going to slide my signature on top. I am going to make sure that we don't go down to the bottom. Like I was saying before, you want to leave anywhere between 1/8 of an inch is a little bit on the smaller side. So I like to go about 1/4 of an inch, and the tape is giving me a bit of a guide as well, because I know that it's about 1/4 of an inch on top. And when I'm installing them, I just like to make sure that when we're folded, that we're staying within the album, because if your hinge is a little bit off, it doesn't necessarily, you know, it doesn't impact everything, but I do want to make sure that when they flip, that they are going to be staying within the cover, the confines of our cover. And I like that where that is, so I'm just going to press, gently press where I have it peeled back, and I'm going to peel back one side while adhering. Sometimes the end, it can get a little bit stuck. You can also do, there we go. You can also do it with glue. So if you wanted to attach some glue to that, you could just gotta wiggle it a bit. You could peel it all the way back, add your glue, excuse me, which is what we've done a few times. Sorry, I just gotta put that pin back in the glue before it totally dries out on me. So I'm just gonna double check again that the front is facing me. I am going to peel back some more of the adhesive backing, like so. And then attach, just slide it over. It's not sliding. There we go. There we go. Okay, so I like where that lands. Right. Okay. All right, so good stuff. I peel this back. Again, creating the base to your album is something that you really don't want to rush. So take your time. If it's, you know, not where you want it to be, then if you can, take it off and start again. And just, yeah, that's all I can say is just take your time. Take your time. Okay. Last one. So this could be modified, certainly, if you wanted to have more pages. You're going to have to obviously make a larger hinge. That can certainly be accomplished by adding more paper if you need to. It also needs to be, obviously, your spine needs to be wider as well. So just a couple of things to keep in mind. Okay, so fit this one on. Oops, that one's a little bit crooked, but that's okay. I can fix it. Okay, now this piece is being super, super stubborn. There we go. And that piece. Perfect. So here is our album with our amazing signatures all installed beautifully. So that is going to be, it's not going to be the last part. We are going to be making a little roof, and that will be to go on top of our album, like so. Cute little roof, because our house or log cabin needs to have a roof. So let's make that really quickly. And for the roof, you are going to need 3 pieces. So all of these are, I just used 65 pound to create my roof. Did I use 65 pound? Because that feels a little bit heavier. No, sorry, I used 110. I used 110 for the roof. Okay, so for the 2 panels, so this is created, the base of the roof is going to be created with a piece that's 9.5 by 4.5. And then we have these 2 pieces, the 2 panels that go on the front and the back. And those are created with 2 pieces that are 7.25 by 2.5. So with your 9.5 by 4.5 piece, we're going to do some scoring. And this is going to be scored at 1.5 and 8. So along the 9.5 inch side, we're going to do 1.5 and 8. I'm going to turn it to the 4.5 inch side, and we're scoring this at 1.5 and at 3. Okay, so now we're going to need to kind of cut out some of these square, but not cut them out fully. So I don't want to get ahead of myself. So when I cut this out, we are going to be kind of cutting out like a pie shape. So we're cutting out that score line completely, like so. So we just want to cut this out on the long side. We want it to leave these little tabs attached to this piece right here. So we've got a little square piece that's what we're wanting to kind of leave these tabs on. So we're just going to cut them out on the long sides. And this is what we're left with. So now we're going to clean up our mess, fold these in, excuse me. I'm gonna fold and burnish all of our score lines. We've got our little tabs on our square end pieces. So this is just going to create the foundation basically for our roof. Whew, it is hot. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my glue now. You can use double-sided tape. I know we've been using a lot of it. So I'm just going to add glue. Of course it's not going to work. There. Now it should. So I'm going to add some glue to each of the sides. I'm going to fold them in, get them as square as I can. Remember that we've cut out like a bit of a pie shape, so I'm not pushing it so that it's all the way flush. I'm leaving a little bit of a gap between where, let me stand up so I can show you. So you see how that's not really, this piece is not flush to this piece. It's just because we cut out a bit of a pie shape. So I just want to make sure that it's not, otherwise it's going to be too tight. So we have a little box. That is now our roof. I really should have removed this before I started putting it together. Not so worried about it. We are going to cover it with some decorative paper, but I don't know. That 4.5 was close to the edge, so I'm not sure it would have been covered completely. So we are now going to take our two pieces that are 7 1/4 by 2 1/2. So these need to be mitered a little bit on either edge. And to do that, we're simply going to mark, I'm going to line that up there. So I'm going to mark 3/8 of an inch on either end of the top, just that. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. So that's there. 1, 2, 3 is right there. You can do this also using your score mat, because this is in 8s as well. You just do, the first is a dash, then a solid, then a dash. So you're going to go 3 in, and then the same thing from the right hand side. So 1, 2, 3. And then what we're going to do is it's 2 ways of doing this. So with the top 1/8, we're going to connect that to the bottom, creating that angle. You can then simply just take your scissors, come in, trace that line. We're going to need to do the same thing to the other side. So I just rotated it a little bit so that I could make my marks. Take your scissors. Now, you don't have to use your scissors if you want to put it back into your your paper trimmer, by all means. I have my scissors out. I have a pencil and a ruler, so I'm doing this the old-fashioned way. What we did before paper trimmers kind of were the norm. And just grab your scissors. So we're going to have 2 pieces now with these beautiful mitered corners, or sides, I should say. And these are going to get attached to the long side of each piece. Now, one thing to consider is I'm going to leave the inside part undecorated. If you are looking to decorate it, it might be easier to do that at this point before putting them on. But since I'm not going to be decorating them, I'm just going to apply some liquid glue. I'm applying it to my base because the panels that we just cut are going to be larger than the base, and I don't want glue at the very bottom. So I'm going to flip this on its top to help me get kind of a better alignment. Just make sure that, oops, it's a little bit off. You know what? I'm going to redo that because that is not where I wanted it to be. It was a little bit off from right to left, so I'm going to try this again. Lining it up. There. There, that's better. So we end up, let me just press that down. So we end up with the front of our roof, and I'm going to do the exact same thing for the back. Perfect. There's our roof. Our roof, it's designed to be a bit snug on your album, but will definitely fit. So there you have, oh, I'm so excited because obviously the next few parts are going to be designing it and decorating it and all the fun that goes with that. So I am thoroughly excited about this. Hopefully you are too. I've had a few comments and I can't wait to reveal the final on Monday. So hopefully you have enjoyed this tutorial. Hopefully you've found it useful in some way, shape, or form. I really enjoyed having you. I've had a fabulous time. Hopefully you have too, and that you continue to have a fabulous day. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget about our giveaway, which is going to be August 1st. And if you haven't seen that video, just look in my past videos. I believe it was posted on Tuesday, which would have been, July 19th. It's a fantastic, fabulous giveaway. So hopefully you enter to get a chance to win. And that's because we've reached 500 subscribers, which I'm still really, 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 really happy about. And don't forget to hit the notification bell. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. I answer every single one of them. Thanks again for joining me. Have a fabulous day. Stay safe, stay well. Bye.